Hello, this is a Brave Knight Mercenary Spotlight on Sillion. Sillion is a legendary mage and is part of the Personas. Sillion is a genius knight and is actually a girl dressed up as a male. She is a highly respected knight that is also talented in music and magic. Her family, however, was accused of treason, and when she was running away from her enemies, she chose refuge at the bottom of an icy lake to lose her pursuers. Her blood reacted to this lake and woke up Evangelia. Evangelia saved Sillion and gave her a magic flute. Sillion vowed to restore her family name, and with a new formed contract with Evangelia, she can now command the bitter cold. I'll briefly go over Sillion's skills, gameplay style, and provide some of my opinions on her. I won't be going over the details of her skills, but just the general parts of it. I linked the Brave Knight Encyclopedia in the video description where you can easily read on her stats and skill values. Sillion's first skill is Three-Headed Dragon's Breath. This is Sillion's signature additional damage skill. Sillion deals direct additional damage to the main target based on her attack value. If there are units that are horizontally or vertically connected to the main target, then Sillion will deal defense ignoring and guard ignoring additional damage to them based on her attack value. Basically, this skill applies a specialized AoE. Sillion is a single target mage, but she can hit many units if they're all linked together. Let me show some examples. In this example, Sillion will target Levia. Remember that Sillion hits skip tiles. Levia takes the full direct damage. The warriors around her will also be hit as a result and take defense and guard ignoring damage because they're all connected horizontally and vertically. In the second example, Sillion will only hit Levia. The units around Levia are not connected horizontally or vertically. In this third example, Sillion will hit all of the characters. They all form a chain horizontally and vertically. In this final example, Sillion is targeting bot and will eventually hit every unit. By now, you should have an idea on how this works. There's also a few properties to keep in mind as well. Sillion is only attacking one tile and the skill itself deals the connecting damage. As a result, Sillion is only normal attacking one tile and will not trigger counters with her connected damage. Do be wary about incoming damage reflection however, as those characters could reflect the damage done as they aren't activated by normal attacks. Grandhilder, Childe, and Glacia have this property. Sillion generally has 100% defense from her survival buff to avoid damage from them, but if she has buff prohibition or gets nullified during her attack, she could potentially die. Second, graves do not count as a connected path. If there's a grave between the main target and another unit, the other unit will be spared. Third, Sillion's AoE properties still work if she's affected by the Coiling Viper spell. Viper only reduces the unit's attack range to one tile, but Sillion's AoE spawns from her skill and not her actual attack range, if that makes sense. Basically, the TLDR is that Viper does not affect Sillion's performance. Anyways, that's mostly it for the skill. Not too bad. Sillion's second skill is Chains of Bitter Cold. When a battle begins, Sillion gains a permanent buff where her attack increases based on the number of her allies' graves. At plus 10 and above, this skill also comes with permanent taunt ignore. Sillion's third skill is Masterpiece. This is a permanent immunity skill. Sillion is permanently immune to stats weakening debuffs. Sillion can also increase her incoming damage reduction cap while providing her with incoming damage reduction. This can go as high as 99.9% of incoming damage reduction at plus 14. Sillion's awakening skill is Survival. Sillion gains a heal buff before normal attack that provides her with a turn-by-turn healing and boost to her defense. At plus 11, this defense boost can reach 100%. Sillion is a mage designed to destroy a cluster of enemies that are connected horizontally or vertically. Sillion is unique in the sense that her attack range is very dynamic and dependent on the enemy formation. If the enemy runs a formation where there are enemies lined up or clustered together, Sillion can effectively deal with them. Sillion is a character more focused on the design and unit placement of a composition rather than primarily who she is fighting. Her versatility coverage of direct damage along with defense and guard ignoring damage gives her a lot of good matchups, but the enemy form has to be compliant for her to truly shine. If there are too many isolated units, then she's prone to just hitting one unit only, which is pretty poor value for a mage that has to charge up one turn. Sillion can also work as a pseudo tank, giving her 99.9% incoming damage reduction. She has to be wary about fixed, direct, and barrier ignoring damage however. Her lack of immunities also makes her very vulnerable to many debuffs that aren't stats weakening. Another one of Sillion's weaknesses is her potential lackluster damage. At plus 15, Sillion deals 50% of her attack value as defense and guard ignoring damage. 50% scaling isn't that great and will require Sillion to amass a decent amount of offensive stats to make it worthwhile because this damage can graze and is affected by the enemy's incoming damage reduction. When it comes to runes, Sillion wants percentage attack runes, pretty plain and simple. A higher base attack will allow her to cash out on bigger bonuses once the graves start appearing on her side. Double percentage assault runes should do. I'll go over what Sillion counters. Sillion's main target direct damage can pretty much kill almost anything, as direct damage is supreme damage. Sillion's side tile, guard, and defense ignoring damage is particularly good against somewhat low HP units that rely on defense or guards to stay alive. On the guard side, it's good against Yuri, Kaelin, and Zusera. On the defense side, it's good against Dalvi, Eden, and Dwen. Sillion's high incoming damage reduction allows her to effectively tank against Dwen, Asmode, other Sillion's AoEs, along with many other things. If something does not have barrier ignoring properties or is not fixed or direct damage, Sillion takes it easy. I'll go over some Sillion counters. One of the best counters against Sillion is Jhin, as he can reflect her direct damage and kill her. Sillion can still kill Jhin, however, if it's her AoE that strikes him. Jin's add damage reflect only triggers if he's normal attacked, but remember that Sillion isn't normal attacking anyone who her AoE damage spreads to. Seto can also kill her with this counter at the risk of dying himself. For any counter strategy, they should be the main target and preferably are isolated as much as possible. Units with reasonably high health values combined with incoming damage reduction can do well to survive Sillion's AoE. Siegmund and Mercenary rely on their guard sometimes, but their base health and incoming damage reduction is very high, which requires Sillion to amass a lot of offensive damage to properly kill them with their AoE alone. Units with insane incoming damage reduction like Isaac, Vinaka, and Sillion herself can survive Sillion's AoE relatively unharmed. Ceres is also an interesting 4-star support that can provide her allies with immense incoming damage reduction and raise their incoming damage reduction cap. Tanks with high amounts of incoming damage reduction in HP are also difficult for Sillion to kill. Kali, Benshina, Bane, Caleron, Seer, Cecilia, and Valtor can be tough for Sillion to kill. Speaking of Cecilia, she can actually stop Sillion's AoE from spreading if Cecilia is the main target. Cecilion, god damn it. When it comes to killing Sillion, barrier ignoring damage, fixed damage, or direct damage is the way to go. DOT, stigmas, and attack interferences can also work. For barrier ignore, you got Lumen, Angelica, Mamonir, and Barbariba. For fixed damage, Seto, Siegmund, Gunther, and Velfern are some options. For direct, you have Sillion, Levia, Victor, and Alec. Good units for DOTs are Christina, Kyria, and Catherine, and Slain, and a good stigma killer is Bane. So some synergies with Sillion. Sillion works well in most compositions, but would highly appreciate any kind of offensive buff. Sola is always a good option for a mage, but if you're running her in a non-soul comp, then you may want Galenia, Veronia, or Asmode. Sillion actually has a very weak synergy with Barbariba. Sillion is a single target attacker with a skill that allows her to hit other targets. If Sillion has Barbariba's buff, Barbariba will only provide covering fire on Sillion's main target, which is likely dead. Otherwise, you're pretty free to flex her as you see fit. Okay, so for my opinion, Sillion is a solid mage with highly variable killing potential. Sillion herself is powerful if you can read the trend of formations. A lot of powerful supports buff a line or a cluster of units, so Sillion tends to be good at exploiting that if the enemy tries to optimize their support buffs and fit in as many units within the buff range as possible. Sillion's taught ignore further cements this, so she becomes really powerful if you wish to counter specific forms that you may see in arena. This subsequently also makes her pretty strong in Guild War and Underground Arena as well. Safe to say she's good in most contents of this game. So the question begs, should you build Sillion? And my answer is, sure. As it is right now, many units don't have a combination of impressively high life pool and incoming damage reduction, but that trend may shift as the game goes on. Sillion's main target, direct damage, will always be relevant at the very least. She carries a lot of versatility, but she also has a lot of very apparent weaknesses. What I'm trying to say is that I think Sillion is good and definitely good enough to build without feeling like you're going the wrong path. I don't think she's strictly better than Levia, Celia, or Velfern, but she definitely does a lot of different things. It helps that Sillion is better acclimated for the current meta, however, as she maneuvers around guards while Levia, Celia, and Velfern have issues dealing with them. If you play mage comps or just want a jack of all trades mage, Sillion is definitely a very solid legend pick. When it comes to investing in Sillion, she's not really a cheap unit. The road to plus 10 is important because Sillion's first skill gets a lot of improvement in damage along the way, and Sillion wants as much damage and scaling as possible. Plus 10 is where Sillion gets her permanent taunt ignore, which allows you to play the enemy formations a lot more reliably. Plus 12 is where I really feel like she's a complete unit because her damage is pretty solid at that point, but plus 14 isn't bad to have her reach the almighty 99.9% incoming damage reduction. Her final plus 15 doesn't seem like it's much, as it just boosts her guard ignoring damage from 35% attack scaling to 50%, but this could be pretty big, especially if she crits. It's not a mandatory boost, but if you see situations where the enemy barely lifts her attacks, then yeah, a plus 15 Sillion probably would have killed. Overall, Sillion is a pretty good mage, and I like her gameplay design. She stands pretty well among the roster of other legendary mages, especially Valfern, Celia, and Levia. It's hard to choose between the four since they do quite different things, but if the meta favors guards, Sillion is definitely a really strong option. Even without guards being a thing, Sillion has a lot of good matchups, but her lack of immunities can be exploited quite easily, and her lack of damage at times is really annoying to experience. Nothing that a few support buffs can change, however. The final question is whether or not one should invest in Sillion or Babariba. Sillion is the easier and more simple character to use and understand, but I find Babariba's gameplay far more interesting and fun to use. Sillion unfortunately has the disadvantage of being a mage, which attacks once every 2 turns, so I think Babariba is the more flexible pick, even despite Sillion still working on non-mage and mage comps alike. This is mostly my take though, and the future is always uncertain as to who may be better overall, so just go whoever you like or have more fun using. Anyways, thanks for watching my Sillion Mercenary Spotlight. Stay tuned for more.